the sort of format for today, hopefully will be nice and relaxed and engaging. We've got a couple of introductions. I'll talk briefly about Feeding Gloucestershire, and then Nick and Lena from the Forest will give a bit of an overview of what's happening in that district, and then Jackie will do the same for Cotswold. If you're not speaking, would you mind just muting, because we're getting a little bit of feedback through. That would be brilliant. And then we've got 4 fantastic speakers that are involved in running a pantry provision of some sort across the county, that are going to give you some background to their project and how it's working, and hopefully some sort of honest feedbacks of the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, so that those of you that are interested in looking at a pantry model can sort of hear firsthand, you know, some of the experiences and tips and what have you. We're going to have a good session at the end if we keep the time for discussion and questions and answers. But anything pressing, please put your hand up or pop something in chat. We've got another speaker that will be joining us, but I know that she couldn't make it at the start. So she'll join us, you know, throughout the morning and speak towards the end. So if we start, Feeding Gloucestershire, hopefully you've all sort of heard of us in one way or another, but we are a network, a county-based network. We're part of the Feeding Britain network. We also work very closely with Jenny Salter, who is Gloucestershire's Sustainable Food Place Coordinator. So we cover those sort of strands of work. Deb Baker, my colleague, who is network coordinator, giving a wave, is also on the call. We work across the 6 districts together. I cover Cotswold, Stroud and Forest of Dean. So Deb covers Cheltenham, Gloucester and Tewkesbury. And then there's a lot of work that also happens at county level as well. We are a membership network, so organisations with a similar ethos and end goal are very welcome to join us as a network and have access to resources, events, a forum, and we sort of look to try and collaborate and convene across the county. I will put my details in the chat, as will Deb, and our website. If you would like any more information, please let us know. So that's plenty for me for the time being. If I pass you over to the Forest, I don't know if Nick or Lena would like to take the lead, but they'll give you an overview of where the pantry provision work is in the Forest of Dean at the moment.
Yeah, if I start, Lena, if that's okay, and then you sort of pick up anything that I miss out. So good morning all. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Nick Penny. I'm a programme manager for Forest Voluntary Action Forum. So we support the work of the community sector across the Forest of Dean. And my role is effectively overseeing sort of a multitude of projects that we are supporting the community to deliver or delivering with the community. And one of which that I've been involved in for the last couple of years is around the area of sustainable community food. So what we've done as sort of as a VCS organisation is we've helped to coordinate and facilitate sort of network conversations across the Forest of Dean with a whole range of organisations, whether they be sort of village gardening groups, whether they be community kitchens, whether they be community fridges, landowners, etc. And we've just facilitated the coming together of people to have conversations, to identify synergies and to really look at actually how we can support each other. We've brokered conversations with the likes of Forestry England to try and actually make land available for community gardens, and we've seen some great work you know, growing from the community in those areas. And we're also involved with the holiday activity and food programme as district leads for the Forest of Dean. So quite a wide range of work in this sustainable community food area. And most recently, supported by Lena at the District Council and Two Rivers Housing, we've done some mapping work to try and actually create an interactive Google map of all of the various community food related projects across the Forest of Dean, all of the warm hubs and so on, to bring that together into something that's quite visible, that people can click on and actually get the information around those individual projects and understand how they can actually access the support that might be available in the community. And alongside all of that, for the last couple of years, we've been looking at how we might be able to support a pilot for a food pantry across the Forest of Dean. So we have Trestle Trust with the food bank. We have the Salvation Army doing some amazing work with emergency food provision. We have a few community fridges, which we support some of the supermarket surpluses into. But we feel that actually we would really like to support the community in terms of taking those next steps into perhaps a little bit more sustainability and actually develop a pantry model which removes some of the reliance on food banks.
Yeah,
in the
that's what they call a
food.
stock condition survey.
Hello. Yeah, so we are, as I say, very much moving towards exploring our pantry model. The limiting factor for us has always been around where we would host the pantry, and we now actually have a new premise which has some amazing space in it that will become a community hub in the centre of Cinderford. So we're ready now, and we have funding in place to set up a pantry, and I'm delighted that we have my colleague that's on the call this morning, Linda Bailey, on secondment to us for 6 months from the John Lewis Partnership, and in particular Waitrose. So Linda is actually reaching out and is really looking at, you know, what a good pantry looks like, what lessons other partners on the call have learned, so that actually in the Forest of Dean we can create this trial and share the learnings with a wider community food network that we're connected into, so that we can actually have something that is, you know, sustainable and adds value to the community. So I've probably said more than enough there,
I know you have frustrated,
but I'm sure I probably missed quite a bit as well. So I would ask Lena to build on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, you know, I was introduced to this agenda via our service level agreement conversations, because all our conversations are around crisis and emergency responses, and all the work FVAF had been doing during lockdown, and the conversations they had was highlighting the need to look further into the future. So as Nick said, we've supported with some mapping, and we're looking at aligning everything to what we do, like our community grants and our community building work. And it's exciting times, and you know, the pantry, like Nick's highlighted, the pantry in Cinderford, it's how we look across the district. So we're just really keen to learn from you guys about the models that you have, so that we can build our knowledge and look at how we approach the forest. I suppose that's as simple as it is, really. So I don't need to labour on, I don't think, which is short for me.
Thank you both. I think what we'll do is if we hear from Jackie now about the work that's happening in the Cotswolds, and obviously the Cotswolds Cirencester Food Bank, who are speaking this morning, have recently just opened in a matter of weeks, so it's really good timing, and hopefully that will be a stimulus for sort of more work, pantry work, to happen across the Cotswolds. Over to you, Jackie.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just to warn you, I've got a bit of a nasty cold and a bit of a cough, so I'm apologising in advance if I have to cough in between. So my name is Jackie Wright. I'm the Community Wellbeing Manager at Cotswold District Council and also the Community Safety Lead there. We have been thinking about and doing some work in terms of food provision across the district for about 18 months now. And we have had a lot of conversations with the Long Table, who are based in Stroud, and also Lizzie and Deb from Feeding Gloucestershire over the past months. We are very interested in looking at sustainable food provision across the district, because we know there's actually enough food to feed everyone, but we know that there are a lot of people, and especially children, are going hungry. And then obviously there's the food bank. But what we actually trying to achieve is to destigmatize the whole issue around food poverty, because we know nobody needs to go hungry, and nobody actually should have to go to a food bank, and there's always this stigma attached to going to a food bank, isn't there? And we know that a lot of people really struggle with that. So actually we want to destigmatize and really support food provision locally across the district, with more sustainable models, like community pantries, community fridges, community kitchens, anything really that opens up nutritious food to the whole community, no matter what the background of the people is. It doesn't matter if it's, somebody from the manor house coming down, being really passionate about reducing food waste, which this is about as well. It's about the environment, it's about reducing food waste, but it's also about just equal access to nutritious food for everybody, no matter what the background is. So this is our driver at Cotswold. We are working very closely with the Long Table. We have worked with them, especially at the end of last year, to deliver community feasts. So this was about bringing people together around Christmas time, really sharing a meal and trying to find people in our local communities who would like to host a meal, a feast, for a number of people. And the Long Table have prepared some sort of guidance, and we're also there to support face-to-face those people who wanted to host a meal. And I think we had a number of meals, about 10 actually happening in advance of Christmas, which was great. And we are continuing to work closely with the Long Table. We also got together with Feeding Gloucestershire, Long Table, and Anton from the food bank in Cirencester to talk about, or to look at, how we can develop a food network across the district and look at it more strategically, really bringing everybody together who has an interest in food and food provision, which also includes food producers, growers, and so on and so forth. So this is work in progress. So watch the space, and if anyone here on the call, I've seen somebody from Cirencester here from the Rotary Club, and also from Morton in Marsh. If you want to be part of that and be involved, then please let us know. And then obviously Mary is here today because we've just opened, or they have just opened, their first food pantry in Cirencester, which is not about, people not going hungry anymore. It's about being passionate about food, nutritious food, and reducing food waste. So she will talk to you a little bit about that after me. And we are working with Fair Share on that. And actually, we have given some funding to this pantry as a startup fund. We've got a funding program which is called Cotswold Connected Community and Food Program. I will share a link with you in the chat. You can have a look at that, because we are very keen to support any food projects, sustainable food projects like that, with some startup funding. And the other provision that we've got in the district, apart from this new Cirencester Pantry, is a community fridge in Tetbury, which has been running for, I think it must have been almost a year now. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's been a year now. It's really successful. Again, this is about food waste, and it's highly in demand. And I think they are planning to add a bit of a pantry onto that as well. But apart from that, there are no other fridges that I'm aware of, or pantries. I know there are community kitchens and some feast kind of projects happening in the district, but no other pantry or community fridge at the moment. So really keen to see that grow and to develop a proper food network across the district. Everybody who's having an interest working together with us. And I think that's enough for now from me.
Thank you, Jackie. And I think that's it's probably a really good summary actually to why we look to do this workshop, because I think for the Forest and for the Cotswolds, two very large rural districts for the county, there was this sort of want to look at increasing that sort of food provision and options around community fridges, pantry models, but also addressing stigma and food waste, and just trying to learn from those of you that are on the call that are going to speak about how you've sort of incorporated those concepts into your particular projects. So I think it'd be fantastic if we start with you, Mary, from Cirencester Pantry. That's a good follow on. Obviously, you're right at the start of your journey. So I think it'd be really, invaluable to hear what it's been like to get a pantry up and running at the moment, especially after the winter the winter we're in, I suppose, that everyone's just had, and hear how it's come about and your experiences and plans going forward.
Thank you. I can't believe we've only had 3 Fridays. I feel like I've been doing this full time for about 6 months. A little bit of background. I am a benefit specialist. and was with Citizens Advice for about 9 years, and I'm now the benefit specialist for the Almshouse movement. And we have 72 households in Cirencester. And in that, my benefit work and as an almshouse trustee, this issue of poverty is right in the centre of everything I'm engaged with, but alongside people struggling with the cost of living, and just that, not just the recent cost of living, but just issues of poverty, stigma is there. And you can imagine the word almshouse is also something that people who are in the almshouses don't like. They find it has shocked me how little people have managed to find the support that is out there. And so much, particularly with the elderly, even though getting through the door is really hard. Their confidence within their own home is great. So, but they really, fail to come out and get the help that's available. This is where I started, really. I was really concerned about the issue of the price of food and food poverty, and I was always issuing food vouchers at Citizens Advice. The food bank is making us a referral agency to them as well, because some people find it easier to come through the door looking at the pantry, and we can tell if people want extra help and we can refer them quietly. But as firstly, I have to say, I could not have done this so quickly without the support of Cotswold District Council. And the other thing that has never happened to me in my life, money is not the issue. I have, everywhere I've spoken, people or met people, they keep offering me money left, right and centre. What's really, and that's something I have to contradict, one of the problems at the moment is actually a shortage of food, accessing food. We started this project using Fair Share, who had promised us, or said that it would feed 40 to 50 families. It really doesn't. And I've phoned many other food pantries around the country and food larders, and I've had a lot of support and information. If anyone interested to talking to another place, which is in Oxford. Oxford's food pantry opened a year ago, and they now have 200 members. And they've got 4, I think, in Oxford now. And everybody says, it's not enough. The demand is so huge, there's not enough. So on top of a Fair Share is finding it difficult to deliver. I can't get any more than I have, and we actually have. We've been going for 3 weeks. We said we'd start with 40. We've got 65 on the list and 17 on the waiting list, way above. And we keep saying that we don't know how long you'll be on the waiting list, but people really want to get on, and so we try. On top of Fair Share, who we have to go and fetch from Stroud the food, which hopefully in time we'll be able to have a delivery to us directly. But in the meantime, that just adds another issue of we're very dependent on people going to fetch the food for us. So the issues of the logistics of the pantry include a lot of volunteers helping, and I don't know how long we can keep up their goodwill, really. So that's one thing for the future. So on top of being slightly disappointed with the quality, the quality was fantastic of food. Our first food pantry was quite a surprise. It included chorizo, Scotch eggs, and packets of macaroons, Waitrose's packets of 12. very delicious, but not necessarily food that you're expecting for families. So we then went out and registered with Neighbourly. Neighbourly specifically, as you may know or not, is Sainsbury's, Aldi's, Lidl's, and Morrison's. And we had our first delivery, or not delivery, we have to go and fetch from Aldi's last week, which was terribly exciting, because they were so pleased to see us, which was really nice. And they kept saying, can you take this? Can you take that? So we had 2 full trolleys, and they also provided not just fresh fruit and vegetables and food, but they also had some baby's clothes and baby's shoes and anything you basically find in Aldi's. So that was good. But it is, it is a problem, not, the expectation of members coming, that they are looking for a full shop, and really we don't know what we're going to get each week. So, and I'll come back to that, because I think that's one of the challenges for the future, is actually expectations. We did set at the beginning, going back to looking, dealing with the problem of the stigma. We very much promoted ourselves as ending landfill and food waste. Obviously, we said we're all being challenged with the cost of food, and it will help. We have to make a charge, because it's not for the food, but we have to pay fair shares costs and the rental of the church hall we use for the pantry. And actually my single most expensive thing is renting the church hall, and finding a premises that isn't going to cost us a lot is an issue. But what happens on a day on the days that the pantry is open, members pay for a single membership, it's £14, and a family is 22. And we originally tried to say that would be 14 items for singles and 28 for families, but it's soon, we're getting so little fruit and vegetable. I think we've had potatoes. The local fish and chip shop gives me 25 kgs. So I can give out potatoes, but there's not really enough range at the moment, which we are sure will change. We were approached by the organic farm that's outside Cirencester. Got an email from her saying she saw our publicity, and she was really excited to hope that she would be able to provide us with some of her glats when the fruit and veggies came in. But on top of that, and this is another really lovely thing, she said she'd like to discuss cooking and growing with the pantry, which is super, because I think we will find that there are one of our founding volunteers is actually a chef, professional chef. And so when we only had potatoes for the last 3 weeks, she cooked some Duchess potatoes, which I never actually had before. Absolutely delicious, brought them in, people could sample them, and she brought recipes. And also, of course, I always said we're going to end up with celeriac one day, and sure enough, last week we had celeriac, so we were dishing out recipes for that, and people were actually going home and sharing, cutting them in half, because single people, that's quite a big thing to use. The members then are they come in, and the first thing we did, serendipitously, the weather wasn't very nice, people were queuing outside, so we had the coffee, we had some large tables out with 6 chairs around, and we served coffee. And so we just got people to come in, sit down, you're not going to lose your place in the queue, help yourself to coffee. And since then, those tables are full and people stay there, and they're not with their same little groups. They seem to and that's something else that is really been very unexpected. And again, going back to some of the benefit work and the almshouses, a lot of people are very lonely, and although they may, almshouses are lovely places to live, but they don't have community areas. So people are living in, and they don't really get anywhere to come together. So it seems to be working as a space where people are chatting and are beginning to make friends. Part of your commitment to being a member is that you commit to volunteer too. And we keep talking to everybody about, this is your organisation. We're not doing this for life. We hope it works as long as but you're going to take over in time. So, and we have some really great ideas coming. And we hope we will be able to do that. And I don't envisage that we would be able to do what Oxford did, which also started with only 50 members and got up to 200. They have full-time workers supporting them. This is where I realized that to do this, it does take an awful lot of time. And we have to see how sustainable just the kind of volunteerism for this will be. But we're only into the first month, and it's great fun. I have to say, it's great fun, and people are really lovely. So just in terms of the great things that have happened is that the food banks supply me with all the pasta that we need. I don't have to get that from FareShare. Apparently, donations in supermarkets for the food bank are always full of pasta, and they say that they're really paying to store pasta. So it's not anything that we're not taking it from anyone else. They provide the pasta. So that's a great, so I get pasta from them. Sometimes they'll have something odd that they've been given and they can pass on. And then at the end of the evening, because we're open from 4 till 7 on a Friday, the local homeless organisation called Signpost that cooks meals, hot meals during the week, and also has a Saturday morning breakfast. They come in and they take away anything perishable, any milk that's left over. They take the potatoes when they're left over. And they came the first time we were meant to take it to them on the Saturday morning. We invited them to come and meet us and see how it was going. And they came and they stayed, and they come every week now, which I know it's only been 3 weeks, but it's a nice connection again. And they always, it feels like that there's people, we are a network naturally, and that's good. We also have now got to this, and this is the challenge. Besides the challenge of being a volunteer program, is the challenge of the food being enough. And I was asking Oxford about this, because sometimes the food is just, there's not very much protein in there at all. I spoke to Minehead Food Pantry, and she said she has to go out sometimes and buy cheese or something, because she's very strict about having 40 members, and you come each week, and if you don't come, you lose your membership, because there are so many people on the waiting list. And she knows that she's actually attached to the food bank, and so it is families who have food insecurity, and it's important that it's as balanced a food as possible, rather than just macaroons and chorizo, Scotch eggs. So the problem has become is that the families require a lot more food than we actually have available. And so Oxford has now suggested that, they're not suggesting, they are going towards not having family and single membership. They're just having a membership, because it's about, they've decided that there's a bit of them and us. There's a tension beginning to arise with families needing the food, and we're not, we're not really there to say, you know, to end food poverty, you know, and we don't want to set up a rivalry between the elderly who are single and families who have great needs, families with lots of children. And there was one member suggesting that we should put the expensive food, because it's large, you know, the milks and the cheeses and things all on one table just for the families because they really need it. And we're really grappling with that because it, you know, we don't want people to feel we're being unfair, and we try
to interrupt, Mary. Sorry,
I'm going on.
I'm going to change devices because the battery's not holding on this one. Sorry, can you let me back in a minute? Sorry, Mary.
No, that's all right. I need to stop talking now. I will be looking forward to some of your suggestions maybe towards that, because I think that is our next step. Because anyway, how to deal with the huge number of people who want to join, and also this, because the other thing, of course, is that one family equals 2 single households, and you know, it's just, how do we make this fair and make sure everyone gets, so far we've managed to get these extras each week that have filled up, but I can feel that until all the food and veg come in that we've got a problem. Fair Share has invited us tomorrow to go and fetch a trade show's leftovers in the Cotswold Water Park, which is very exciting. They said, I said, how much will it be? Said, well, it won't be, I don't think it'll be much more than a van. So I'm going, a van, you know, it's going to be. So I'm going off with a couple of cars and hopefully we'll have plenty for tomorrow's, but it is an ongoing challenge to get enough balanced food. Thank you, I'll stop there.
No, thank you, Mary. I think that's been is a really good place to actually start with a project that's right at the beginning of the journey, and I think it's amazing. Like you say, it must feel 3 Fridays must feel like an eternity, because it feels, you know, listening to you, you know, you've achieved so much, and I imagine learned so much in a very short space of time. That leads us quite nicely actually into Cheltenham. So we're very lucky. We've got Faith with us. I'm looking at my screen. Yes, I can see you, Faith. We've got Faith with us from Springbank, who are going to talk about their project, but also supported afterwards by Sarah Avery, to talk a little bit more broadly about the work in Cheltenham. The pantries in Cheltenham have worked very well together and have a bit of a network going. And so we thought it'd be really interesting to hear both sides of that, from an individual pantry based in Cheltenham, but from Sarah's perspective of how the pantries are working together. And maybe Sarah might have some insight into sort of food supply and surpluses and some of the issues that Mary has already sort of highlighted that have cropped up for them at the start of their journey. So if I start with Faith, there were some slides. Would you like them, or are you going to speak without them? It's up to you.
Yeah, you can. So Sarah put the slides together. You're more than welcome to put them up. I didn't put any slides together, but if you want to put them up, then carry on.
Well, why don't we pop them up, Nick, and then people can see them there in the background. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you.
So we started in March 2020, mainly because I was at that time working in a cafe in the building that we are in now, and got made redundant, and there was food left over, and I'd had a very informal sort of food bank sort of on a table in the cafe. So I knew that there was a need there. So myself and a colleague who'd been furloughed just put up on Facebook, does anybody need any help? If you do, just let us know. And what started out as a very informal come and get it if you need some help, got bigger and bigger, and we ended up as an extremely large lockdown food bank. And we then set up as an organization. So our directors are made up of the founding directors, of which there are 3 of us, and then other members of the local community. And we have a lady who was brought on. She has no voting rights, but she kind of is there to steer us in the right direction to make sure we don't go off track. So we then realized that actually it was not a sustainable model to keep going as a food bank, so to speak, and that actually we needed to move over to a pantry model. So in the September of 2020, we became kind of a bit of a hybrid, and we were doing part pantry, part food bank, just as a kind of suck it and see to see how it was going to work. And then by December, so we were doing 1 day a week of pantry and 2 days food bank. And then by December of 2020, we were on 3 mornings a week of pantry. We do charge. We charge £3. Currently, we are charging £3.50 a visit, and that will be going up on the 2nd of April to £4. And all the pantries charge the same in Cheltenham. So on the 2nd of April, all of us are going up to £4. And most people are able to pay that £4. And if people aren't, then they talk to us, and we have the Feed Cheltenham vouchers for people who struggle to pay that. And then we have some people who will say, well, I can't afford the £3.50, but I can afford to pay X amount. And so that's what they do. They pay that X amount of money. And then we have other people who will kind of come in the middle of the week and say, I've got money, can I pay you now? Because otherwise, if I wait until the day that I'm coming in, I won't actually have the money. So we take the money then, because they'd rather pay, even if it's not the point when they're coming into the pantry, because they want to be able to pay, but they know that they'll have spent it by next Wednesday when they're coming in to use the pantry. We started with 15 members or 15 people attending. We now have probably about 150 people coming through the week. We have 4 pantry sessions. We have 3 morning sessions and 1 evening session. And we also do deliveries to 50 people who have food requests. So it's not like a food bank. They still request the food that they're having. And we just pack it and deliver it for them, and they still pay for it. Most of them pay by cash, some of them pay by standing order. And the people that we deliver to are people who are, most of them are elderly and can't actually get to us, or they have mental health issues, which mean that they don't actually leave their house. And the people who we deliver to, a lot of them are referred to us for social prescribers. Our food comes from Fair Share, which we pay for, which gets delivered to us once a week. We are also part of the Neighbourly scheme, and we get food. We used to get huge quantities of food from that, but as the cost of living crisis has impacted on everybody, the food that we get from that is very erratic now. So sometimes we get lots, sometimes we get hardly anything. We tend to get a lot of bread sometimes, and we used to get lots of fresh, we used to get fruit and vegetables from it, but that has gone down a lot because people, what the supermarkets are saying to us is that people are waiting in the stores until everything is yellow ticketed, and then they're going into the stores, people are going into the stores and they're buying it, whereas it didn't used to get bought so much. And also people who work in the stores are actually buying it as well, because they get discounts on the discounts, and it's also going into colleague shops. So it's not coming out into, it's not being wasted so much anymore. We as a Springbank ourselves, we don't tend to pick up from Lidl and Aldi's because it can be very hit and miss as to what they donate. So we don't get from there very often, although they do some good stuff in there with frozen food, and they've started doing frozen food recently. So that Mary, that might be something that you look into if you have access to a freezer for people that are using your pantry. We also get stuff from, so as part of Neighbourly, we also pick up from Sainsbury's, and theirs is usually quite good. Quite often, sorry Mary, we get a lot of potatoes from them. But we do buy a lot of food. So out of the money that we get from people, we buy fruit and vegetables. I've got a relationship with, not an intimate relationship, but I have a relationship with my greengrocer, and so he gives me quite a good discount on the stuff that I get from him. I also we also buy dairy, and we buy meat, so that's where they're getting their protein from. We used to get cheese, but the cost of cheese went up so ridiculously that it was getting to the point that it was nearly more than £3.50 that people were paying. So I decided as a pantry that we were no longer going to be able to do that. So I buy yogurt and milk, which is considerably cheaper, and we have had no complaints, and a lot of people are actually happier getting milk and yogurts they can give to children. Milk, people are much happier getting anyway, and I buy nothing that's more than £1.50. We are run solely by volunteers, and some of our volunteers are actually people who were using the pantry and wanted to give back. So that's really important. And a lot of people who use the pantry, actually, that's the only time they come out of the house. And what we found is a lot of people come in on set days at set times because they want to see the volunteers who are in on those days, but also because they're coming in to see the same people who are using the pantry. So they may not actually know them, but they've established relationships with those people. So they know, if they ask, oh, is so and so okay, if that person hasn't, the person who they're used to seeing when they come into the pantry isn't there. So there's a lot of relationship building and checking up on people amongst themselves, which is really important, as well as volunteers kind of doing welfare checks on people. We're finding that people who use the pantry are doing welfare checks on people, which is good. We also use, I don't know if Mary used Fair Share Go as well as Neighbourly. So Fair Share Go picks up from Tesco's, and Tesco's actually tend to have quite good Tesco's and Waitrose, so they tend to have quite good donations, and they're usually fruit and vegetables. So that might be quite a good way if you're getting some fruit and veg into the system for you. We also have, we're quite a good hub, so we have other activities going on there. So we have a lunch club for people who are living in social isolation, and that's for people who are referred to us by social prescribers, the enablement team, our pantry volunteers. We have the first lot that we have groups of sort of 8, and the first group had such a good time and they didn't know each other that they now meet for coffee, and now we've got a second group coming in. We have a community cafe as well. We do the half work, so we do that in the park, so it's a bit hit and miss with weather, but it doesn't seem to put people off. Even if it's raining, they still come. We have youth clubs going on, so we're a bit of a community hub. So although there's the community resource centre opposite us, we have we are more of the hub of the area, because the resource centre seems to have a lot of office work going on opposite in there. We have all the nice things, if you like, going on where we are, and the pantry was the kind of start of all that. So from the pantry, everything else has come from there. So yeah, it's a really important place, and you get to know the people that are coming there, and you know, we can refer them for fuel vouchers, and people come to you and ask for advice, and we can send people off for, you know, we can point people in the signpost people, and yeah, you think you're there just helping them with food poverty, but actually it's so much more. And we've just got an allotment as well, just to add to all the things that we're doing. So yes,
thanks, Faith. That sounds brilliant, and it certainly seems like there's plenty happening and expanding. I don't know if this is a good time, Sarah, for maybe you to come in and sort of put the context of sort of how Springbank work network within Cheltenham, because I think that'd be interesting for both the Forest and Cotswolds to look at sort of joining up if come up, that relationship between.
Nick, can you just flick through the photos? Yeah, next one. Yeah, so this is before the pantry. So go back one, Nick. Sorry, the first one is how before, when they were just giving out the food, and then the next one is what the pantry looks like. If you do the next photo, Nick. Yeah. So you've got down here in the bottom right hand corner is some pictures of the cafe as well. So, and then if you can flick on not that, yeah, and then the next one. So just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Feed Cheltenham. So Feed Cheltenham was set up in response to COVID pandemic 3 years ago, based on the principle that we can do so much more together than we ever can apart. As this is developed, I don't need to give you the history. What we've done is we've pulled together all the people across Cheltenham that are food providers. So, and we call ourselves the Food Network Providers, and we, as I say, we've got about 30 probably that we work together with across Cheltenham, working in partnership with No Child Left Behind. That's the council's kind of community outreach for children and families. So we have a really, really good partnership with them, and that obviously gives us links into those in the council and some of the schemes and money that they're doing. And what has been absolutely fantastic about this is it's one person has been able to coordinate and kind of be the kind of go-between to what's been running across Cheltenham. So we've pulled together, I say, everybody and anybody really that gives out food in any way, shape or form, with lunch clubs, food banks, food pantries, even those that kind of maybe do, you know, something little as part of their organisation. What the best thing about it is we've been able to learn and share. I mean, as you've just heard, Faith, we've got fantastic learned experience, as have all the others. So the good thing about it is what we can share. We can share networks, we can share contacts, we can share food, we can share information. At the moment, we've got 5 pantries across Cheltenham. Before COVID, we only had the one, and we've probably got about 800 people across Cheltenham that attend kind of every week in terms of membership as well. So the whole project and the whole scheme has really developed, you know, and the guys that were just talking about where they are beginning, we're kind of 3 years into this. And I think what has shown is that we've been able to do so much more together than we ever can apart. And I don't think we've really had to learn to share. I think the people that have been involved have been really willing and able, and that's been a real positive, that people have been willing to kind of join in and share their resources, share their ideas. And actually where somebody has come up with a bit of a, this is what's going to work for me, and perhaps it won't have worked for the other places, we've been able to talk about that and discuss that. And then the Food Network Providers gets together about monthly. They talk about kind of where people are up to, what issues they're facing. And then the Feed Cheltenham coordinator can use that almost to go out for publicity or for perhaps money and grant applications. I'll say the money raised to date is about 348,000. What's been really good about that is that it's been one central place to do it. I mean, the other organisations have done their own fundraising, but we've had big chunks of money that have come through that we've then been able to send out. Can you just do the next slide, Nick, please? So these are some of our stats that we've been able to give out as Feed Cheltenham. As I say, running a food pantry, what we've discovered is it's huge. It's a huge commitment to give a consistent offer across all the different organisations across Cheltenham. So that is what we really try and work towards. So that if you're going to South Cheltenham, North Cheltenham, West Cheltenham, you're getting the same offer. So we really want people to connect locally with their food provision, so that we can then, as Faith said, do a lot of the signposting, a lot of the support. And then because we've got the links with the other organisations, we can then kind of give that out. If you can do the next slide, Nick. So these are some of the things that we've produced. So on the left, you've got the food pantry details. They're all advertised together. As I say, a lot of the things that we do is together, and we talk together, and we share ideas and share resources. So you do get that consistent offer across where it is that you go. And what you'll see in the middle is the Feed Cheltenham Food Pantry voucher. So if we give those out through schools and other organisations, so if somebody is struggling, we give them one of these. Sometimes it will encourage somebody to begin to use the pantry. So over COVID, we were giving out Tesco vouchers to people so that they could then go and buy their own food. And that actually was quite necessary over COVID, because there wasn't the food pantry provision, but also because of the lack of access to shops or community organisations. So it was really helping. So what we've tried to do is to encourage people to use the food pantries And this kind of can encourage somebody in, but also it can give somebody a help, even if they haven't been able to afford it that week. And then Feed Cheltenham will then reimburse the pantry for this voucher out of their central fund. What you've got on the right is the meals. So we're not actually doing this at the moment, but this is to do with funding. But whether we can come back to that at some point. We had some money that we bought these frozen meals that we could then put into food pantries so that people could then help themselves, perhaps if they didn't have the facilities to cook, or perhaps they were a single person, or perhaps they had health needs, or perhaps children had different dietary requirements. So they could then put something in the microwave. And as I say, we tried a couple of different things. One is that they were being got for free, and one is where people could have them at that item. And it doesn't mean that we won't come back to something like that, but that is just, we're just not doing that at the moment. I don't know what you're thinking, Lizzie, but it might be an opportunity for people to ask questions. I don't know if that's kind of really helped, but I think what we would do in Cheltenham, and I think listening to some of you guys here, is that talking together and networking and almost having that central place with somebody kind of centrally almost coordinating that, so that you can bring people together and that you can share ideas, resources, etc., etc. And I think that is really our success in Cheltenham, is that having that big kind of central place where you can put these things through. I mean, I was leading that up until Christmas. I've been very fortunate in the fact that I was able to do that as a paid role through the organisation that I was working for. Even though I did it in my spare time kind of thing. We weren't necessarily paying me to do it, but the fact that somebody was coordinating that, I think, has been really our success. But it doesn't take away at all from any of the organisations and what they each achieve. And even though they do it slightly, their aims are slightly different, or the people that they're organising is working for are slightly different, the kind of basic offer is the same, so that people are not kind of tempted to go there because it's cheaper, or go there because they get more for their money. But say it's been a long thought out process of how many items they get, what we put the money in, and then we've got contacts with people like Cotswold Dairy and lots of other contacts that we've been able to share together. But yeah, I don't know, Lizzie, I'm well unsure about timings, but I'm happy to take questions.
No, don't worry, that's brilliant, Sarah, thank you. And I think it's really useful at this sort of part in the morning to sort of really think about that sort of coordination and collaboration, and that in itself doesn't want to be overlooked, particularly as I've already said, but the Forest and Cotswolds are rural districts, and that they're spread apart, and the need, it's hard to coordinate that when you're looking at market towns and the distance between the market towns, and so I think it's very useful. And also I think when you're at the start of the journey, it's the time to take a step back and think, actually look at that sort of strategic plan of how to coordinate, and it's sometimes easier to do that with a bit more of a blank canvas than sort of when things are already up and running. Jackie, do you want to come in with a question, and then we might go on to the remaining two speakers and then do the remaining questions at the end?
Yes, thank you, Lizzie. I was just wondering, Sarah, you did say that you coordinated this up until December. So who is taking this now over?
So yeah, there is another member of staff who is now doing that. She's not on the call, unfortunately, but I say, because what I've done is I've kind of moved into some freelance work, and I'm on the board with the Feed in Gloucestershire, hence that I've come today, and because this was almost kind of my baby that I set up. So yeah, that does still exist. And actually what we felt with the council is that role was really important. And when we first set up Feed Cheltenham, we didn't obviously know what COVID was going to look like 6 months, 3 years on. But I think with the council and with the other guys from the pantries, everybody felt that role was important. So we went out for some funding specifically for that role, so that we could kind of keep it going. And I think, as I say, when you change roles, things kind of change a little bit. So obviously a lot of the knowledge is in my head, hence the fact that I've come to talk today. But yeah, I mean, one thing I just to say, I can I'm happy to come out and help. So say through my role on Feed in Gloucestershire, I'm happy to talk to people. I think the amazing thing about Zoom is that you don't have to kind of drive half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour down the road to the other side of the county. So yeah, if people do want me to kind of talk more or help them specifically in their contacts, I'm really happy to do that. And as I say, I'm doing that as part of my kind of being on the board of Feeding Gloucestershire. And as Deb just put in the thing, Faith, Linda has taken over from my role, and I'm sure she'd be happy to help, as I'm sure would Faith. But as I say, the great thing about technology is you don't have to drive now, do you? So
Yeah, thank you.
Lena, was that a hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the coordination is key to everything, isn't it? And the challenge you sometimes have is that you get a year funding and you spend a lot of time trying to find another year funding. So it's how you get that long-term funding to really establish it, because you can't overlook it, can you? So did you get a couple of years, or did you go annually? How did you get your setup?
So the role has developed. As I say, I've done it almost as part of my role anyway. I'm very good at taking on another 25 things, and as probably Faith is, until you kind of reach capacity. As I say, the moment the role we went to is 2 years, so we did get 2 years worth of funding before we went out. As I say, the success of Feed Cheltenham has come as a result of COVID. People were very, very willing. A lot of what I do is promote and advocate for thinking money, and that's what I use it for. So I've got a fairly good relationship with my MP, and the local councillors within Cheltenham know this. A lot of the money that comes down from government is reaction money of like, let's feed people for the next 6 months. And what I've really talked about and kind of campaigned for really in a lot of my fundraising is what I call thinking money. Because if you've got money for 6 months, well, then you spend, like you say, 4 months of that thinking, what am I going to do with it? Or you're so busy feeding people today, it's how are you going to feed people in 6 months' time? So the coordinator role has been good to enable people like Faith to feed people today, while I'm thinking about how can they feed them tomorrow. So that you can look at, how to make your pantries more sustainable, how to kind of make contacts further down the line. As I say, we've done lots of social media, lots of raising awareness. I go out and talk to anybody who will pretty much listen. I did, about the story and the fact that this coordination role is needed. And so and it's about allocating funds, isn't it? As I say, it is very difficult to A, do the work, and B, think about what's coming forward. So I think that is one of the key things, and I do think that's a bigger issue than just saying, okay, I've got 2-3 years of money. And that's something that Feeding Gloucestershire would be aware of, and would be something that we would talk about on our agendas. So it is maybe something that we can continue to look at and think, how can this umbrella organisation over the county help to keep these places sustainable? I mean, much as we'd like to see ourselves out of a job and not needing to feed people, I think in reality we know that food pantries are probably going to be around for a very, very long time. And even if electricity prices come down, I don't want to get into politics and society and all of that, but I think we know that these are going to be around certainly for the foreseeable future. So I think, and whether the government will come round to that as well, we don't know, but I think it is the job of those umbrella organisations and the local councils to keep thinking about where is the money going to come from to keep these things sustainable.
Thank you, Sarah. Really good timing, because Alexandra's just come onto the call, who is our next speaker. So if it's not throwing you in at the deep end, I know you've got your camera off at the moment. If you are ready to speak, oh, there we go. Hi, thank you for joining us. Sorry to sort of throw you in as soon as you join the call, but if you're on mute at the moment, but if you're happy to speak about Hungry No More, it would be a brilliant opportunity for you to start. Is it finding that? There you go. Oh no, you're off mute, but we can't hear you, unfortunately. It's not a problem. We can just, I could ask Ruth to speak in the meantime, and that might give you time to have a bit of a fiddle, and also you can then hear a speaker before being thrown in at the deep end. Ruth, are you happy to step in?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank
Yeah. So we started our pantry obviously in COVID, but I'll just give you a little bit of background. So Priors Park Neighbourhood Project is a community hub based in Priors Park, and luckily we were already doing food projects within the organisation. So we were doing older people's meals, Sunday lunches, only once a month, I have to add, because it's quite a lot. And we'd already done like a food cafe project, and obviously creative projects, and we had our drop-ins with the CAB and what was Green Square now CCP. So that was all running, and then we always did kind of food anyway, because we had the relationship set up with the food bank and some supermarkets. So we were quite lucky. So in comes COVID, and chaos erupts, and when you think, oh, it's going to be quite quiet now, then it wasn't. It was like we were kind of forced to set up something. So because of our contacts here, we were able to set up the 7 community responses around Tewkesbury, and our main one actually was Morrison's, of all people, because even though we've got our we were with Neighbourly, Morrison's actually were amazing, and they were our main source, to be quite honest. So yeah, so we just obviously joined Neighbourly, and then we joined FareShare. Obviously, as it's been said before, FareShare isn't quite enough always to go around, so we charge £3.50 per membership, and that gets people about 15 to 20 items, and then anything is free with surplus, because obviously a lot of the food is going out of date that you get anyway. So that can be anything, fruit and veg, bread, lots of bread, I think, like everyone gets, cakes, and all those sorts of things. But what we tried to instill too was the fact that people came in on a Wednesday, because it was in line with our drop-in sessions with CCP. But obviously with COVID, that was all slow to get back on board. So in the meantime, we were able to take the memberships, assess that person's situation, and then we could signpost appropriately what other needs they had. And also we tried to encourage them with recipes. It kind of worked for a little while, but we found that they don't always want to engage on that, and some were showing us pictures of what they made and what have you. So I think that's something I'd like to push again, because they have got opportunities to have cooking classes as well if they want to, and they can join in with coffee and creative and sheds. We've got sheds projects, so we do try to encourage them to join other activities. So with the membership, what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, so we started with the so we had no infrastructure to do this project whatsoever, no funding. It was a bit manic, so I think in our that year, financial year, we had 27 grants. Just that's little grants. Oh yeah, as you can imagine. So it wasn't easy, and that's why we wanted to link county-wide, because I thought, oh my God, why would you struggle when someone else has already done it? So why reinvent the wheel? So we went to CCP, because they just not long started up their pantry, so we were able to go and see what they were doing. And then I think Faith was setting up at the same time, so we were able to link up with Springbank, and obviously we shared any surplus foods that we had, because sometimes you get like too much of something. So this is why I wanted to get more connected, because there are times when we have all this food and we can't physically get rid of it on that day of our pantry. So, and then you're saying you're short of food. Actually, we're not. Sometimes we're like overloaded with food. So it's how you coordinate that issue, and how you collect or deliver. But there's always somebody that lives somewhere, or within a location. So that's something I'd like to push forward. The other thing is obviously we have to get a bit of core funding in for running the pantry, and then obviously you've got volunteers. Obviously they come and go, so it's not easy. And then when you do find those volunteers, they are sacred then. So we've got a great one who delivers and collects for us. So we deliver on a Tuesday, we pick up FareShare from Cheltenham, and then we do Marks and Spencer's, Sainsbury's, and what's the other one? That's it, isn't it? Yeah, on a Tuesday. And then we also have some from Lidl's and Aldi sometimes. But we also, from COVID, I've did a bit of outreach in Gloucester because a lot of our organisations that were coming in to Tewkesbury had families in Gloucester as well, so I can't say no. And then we got involved with Seaware as well, so it's kind of expanded, even bringing stuff into the forest because I live in the forest, so it kind of went a bit everywhere, which is good. So I've got a couple of volunteers that help in Gloucester, and they pick up Lidl's in Gloucester. We've had a lot of frozen food. Again, we've got loads of frozen food at the moment. I'm having to transport over from Gloucester tomorrow, so I get a bit more involved than I'd like, to be quite honest, sometimes, because that's why it is a really quite annoying project to run it sometimes, because you never know what's going to happen and what food you're going to get. So we've had to invest in more freezers. So with the funding we got at the start, we had to put a room into the pantry. We had it like a supermarket initially, and now we do bags, and we find that much better because we can fit more people in. They know exactly what they're going to get each week, and then we can change it. And then anything surplus, fresh, and what have you, is free. And anything, well, Linda's been to us, and she can see we have loads of different things. Aldi used to donate quite often non-food stuff, and we have some amazing stuff, but they don't tend to donate so much now on that front. But again, it would have been really good if we had those other connections, because the stuff that we had was just like amazing, and we could have just helped so many more families. And in the end, we don't have that storage, so a lot of it we donated to Gloucestershire Bundles, but we were also able to help the food bank during COVID, because they weren't able to do their blessings presents for their families, so we were able to offer to do that because we had so much stuff we could wrap up as presents, and then we also give out food as well. And then anyone that comes in, like for instance, we've got the school next door and a children's centre, if they desperately need anything, they can come in and get stuff from us. Anybody really that sort of like comes in. We also deliver a little bit as well, so we've got a care home down the road if we've got a load of surplus on a Wednesday. Anybody that's in the building on a Wednesday at the end of the pantry, if there's stuff left over, they can take stuff home as well, because we have coffee and crate and the housing drop-ins. Yeah, so we're always trying to coordinate those people that can come and take food from us. So I think that's pretty much it, really.
I think that's brilliant, Ruth, and thank you. And I think you sort of highlight particularly the issues around sort of that need for a sort of a network, so that surpluses and gluts, or the opposite, you know, a glut might be, you know, something that's needed somewhere else. And I suppose,
oh, just one thing I've got to mention. So we're going to get a van from Bristol Wheels Projects, and I've contacted them way back before COVID, but it was the cost of running it, and we didn't really have the team, you know, where would we park it? We had all those issues, and we didn't really have the funding in to run it. And then I got an opportunity of a van, I think it was before COVID actually, and then I donated that offer to CCP because they needed a van. Their van had broken down, so I said, look, rather than just cancel that order, let's give it to CCP, which I did. And now we're in a position to take the van, and we've hopefully got one coming in a couple of weeks' time. So that's Bristol Wheels Project. I don't know if anyone knows anything about them. So I got to know from the Tewkesbury Food Bank project manager at the time. And basically, yeah, you just go to mass, say you want a van, and they have young people that do the MOTs and the service on the van. And it's often that's been donated from the police or the water, you know, or gas. So I think we're going to get a Peugeot. I can't remember what it's called now. Is it bigger than a smaller van? Is it? Oh, I can't remember. Sorry, I'm not really expert on the van. So yeah, so that's really quite exciting. But again, that allows us to do more outreach as well. So say, for instance, somebody in Cheltenham, or I know Churchtown, we were trying to say to GL3 that we could take stuff over there. It gives you that nobody has to use their own car, their own vehicle. So
yeah, the van seems a really good addition for you, and I imagine it would be something, again, you know, for Forest and Cotswolds, that you know, to have that opportunity. And also, you know, like Mary was saying at the start about, you know, a van load of food that you might be able to collect Mary tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to use domestic cars sometimes, you know, boot space, practicality. So that's really interesting to know about the Bristol Wheels project, and I imagine quite a few people here might have a little look at that and see a bit more. Thank you, Ruth. Alexandra, are you do you think you have got your tech back up and working?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
you can. Yes, thank you.
I've had to change computers. I'm not usually a Zoom person. I'm more of a Teams person. But anyway, don't worry. We've got it working.
We certainly have. So thank you very much. So brilliant. Yeah, Alexandra is from Hungry No More. So yeah, we'd love to hear about your project and how it works.
Yeah, so thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really disappointed I've missed some of the other conversations. So I thought I'd read out, we've got a mission statement and a vision statement. I thought that might be interesting for you. So our mission is, so Hungry No More provides food support to individuals and families in need in the communities of Churchtown, Innsworth, Long Levens and Longford to feed their families. And we do this because we believe that no one deserves to be hungry and obviously have to choose between heating and eating. And then our vision is to create a respectful community support that serves local households to relieve hunger in a compassionate and dignified way. We're a team who are motivated to be there for people in food crisis for as long as there is a need. And I did hear at one point that, you know, you thought food banks unfortunately are going to be needed for some time. I think, you know, I tend to agree with you, even with the cost of energy perhaps beginning to fall in the summer. So we've been going for about 2.5 years. Our founder, Lel, set us up in October 2020. I think she'd worked in a previous food bank, saw the need more locally to where she was and set that up. And I've got every admiration for anybody who does that because it's not a small undertaking. I joined in January of last year. And I'm now one of the trustees, so I'm classed as a secretary, but I get involved in what I'm trying to do is put us more on an IT footing, so provide, you know, a way of managing our data in a secure way, but also in a way that we can manipulate it and therefore use that more successfully to get funding. So we're managed by a trustee management team, of which there are 5 of us. But we're all volunteers, and then we've got probably about an additional 7 volunteers on top of that. We're actually trying to get some more. Volunteers is I've never had anything to do with volunteers before and volunteering, and it is a bit like herding cats. So they are quite a challenge and quite a different sort of thing to manage, I think. At the moment, we've got about 57 families on our books. In the sort of previous 6 months, perhaps just slightly less than that, we've supported just under about 2,100 individuals made up of all of those families. And that demand, I think, is growing. When I started in January last year, I think we were probably helping about 20 families a week. By September, that was definitely firmly in the middle 30s. We obviously had a peak at our Christmas week where we helped 62 families. And then after Christmas, it went back to about middle 30s. But the last month, actually, we've jumped and we're in the middle 40s now of families. So some of those are single people, some of those are much bigger families. So you can imagine. We are located at GL3 in the hub there, so opposite Tesco's, if anybody knows Churchtown. We've got a very bijou little space. We're in a converted garage in the car park, which has its challenges in terms of space, but also in terms of handing out our parcels, which we do on a Thursday morning. You know, we have to put up 2 gazebos to protect us and the food and our clients from the weather. We also have to manhandle quite heavy tables across the car park from the hub. So there's a lot of setting up that we need to do there. But it's working. It's working at most of the time. I think I heard somebody say a little. I think was the previous speaker said something about space. how to manage all of that. We've also managed to get a storage facility in King Storage in Gloucester, so we've got that as a way of, you know, if we get surplus tins and other non-perishable goods, then we can actually house them there, and then we have to transport them backwards and forwards as and when we need. And obviously at Christmas, when we're trying to gather other extras things as there, that's quite useful for that. And I've just heard yesterday that we've managed to get the funding again for a second year, so that's really, really good. I think our ethos for Hungry No More is it's more than just emergency aid. Actually, it's you know, we have little red tape, so we can choose, you know, to accept people who wouldn't necessarily have the right documentation for getting support elsewhere. Obviously, that leaves us open to abuse. I think on the whole, it feels like we're doing the right things. And, you know, people do leave us, and they leave us because they say, you know, my benefits have come through, or whatever, for whatever reason. So I don't think, you know, we're largely taken advantage of, but that's always a worry. We offer a weekly parcel, a weekly free parcel to our people. We send out a message on a Monday saying, you know, do you need any help this week? And we ask them to let us know back, and we put together that parcel on a Wednesday morning. And then we also offer what we call a paid parcel. And so for that, we charge £4, and they get about 10 items. That food comes from either from FareShare, so we also belong to FareShare, and some of the food that we get through that, we keep that and use that for our paid parcels. Some of it we get other funding and we go out and buy it. So obviously they're getting a lot more for their £4 than they would be if they went and bought it for themselves. Buying in bulk from bookers and that sort of thing can also help us to keep those costs down. Where our food comes from, so we've got donation baskets scattered around Churchdown and in some of the supermarkets. We obviously get some private donations, both in food and in money. And I think really that's probably all I wanted to say, unless there's any particular questions. My last points perhaps were around what worries me the most is around, you know, the increase in demand. We are restricted in space, not so much around storage, because I think we can probably cope with having an off-site storage facility, but just the physical space of, we need enough volunteers to be able to cope with the demand, but we can't all fit in the garage at the same time. So, you know, it's quite a balancing act, I think, for that. I think we've noticed that our donations have dropped quite a bit since the cost of living crisis. So you've got an increased demand and lower donation rate. So that's a challenge. And I think getting sufficient volunteers, the right sort of volunteers, and people who are able to be quite flexible in when they offer their support is quite a challenge, but I guess that's the same for everyone. And then I think my last worry is around, you know, the changes in use by dates for food for supermarkets and things, which I think is great for the environment and for all of us to make more sense. But actually, is that contributing to a reduction in the donations because people don't feel that actually it's coming to the end point, so we'll donate it. So that was it.
So I had to find my button there. Sorry. I think it's really interesting to hear sort of some of your concerns going forward, because I think they've been echoed a little bit through the other speakers. I think we're really good on time, which is fantastic. So we've got the opportunity now to I guess reflect on the 4 different offerings that are up and running in the county, and you know, I think it's been really invaluable to hear the different experiences, the different setups, and there are obviously some similarities that are obviously coming across from all of you, and I think that's sort of important to reflect on. Has anyone, would anyone like to start with some questions? Brilliant. We've got Mary. Should we go with Mary to start with?
Yes, I was trying to keep track. Can I just ask you, are you all charging the same sort of membership fee and then making differences depending on the profile of the families? Could you just give me a bit of guidance there? Or are you all getting the same pack for your membership fee?
We don't charge a membership fee other than our £4, which is very much a weekly offering which people can choose to accept or not accept, so they can have it when they can afford it, but we don't charge a membership fee.
The reason, can I just say, the reason I'm saying membership fee is Fair Share is very strict about not saying that they're charging for their food, so that you have to say that we had to say that it was a membership fee, because that was then they would let us have it, and Neighbourly were the same. I don't know if that's something that other people have come across, but they don't, otherwise they don't want anything to be sold on, so that's where this membership fee, that's why it's called a membership fee.
Okay, so that was obviously all set up before I joined Hungry No More. I guess that would be our £4 a week, which is a set figure.
Basket. Okay. Thank you.
And ours is a set fee of £3.50 to be soon to be £4, but we are, we have some families of 11 and they obviously get more food, but we don't charge them anymore.
Okay, good. That's what I want to hear. Thank you. Helps.
I guess for us, the £4 is a set additional bit. A lot of the food that comes from Fair Share, we don't charge for at all, because that just goes out to all of our families and is distributed in a way depending on how large the families are. But we don't charge anything for that. So I guess our membership fee is slightly
different,
a different approach for that. Yeah.
Nick, do you want to ask? I think you were the next one.
Yeah, if I could just have a quick follow-up with Mary and then a couple of wider questions. So am I right in understanding, Mary, then you charge an annual fee rather than a point of access fee in terms of the way you're working in Cirencester? Because your figures were obviously a lot higher than the others were talking about.
No, it's exactly the same. It's £3, £14 a month. So it's
sorry,
it's £3.50 a week. But we did have again, we copied Oxford, and now we're reflecting on this. They charge £22 for a family a month, so it's an extra £1.50. But this is beginning to cause multiple problems because of the variety of the food and things. So I think that we would like to probably go back to the idea of £3.50 a week for everybody, and get what is your need, rather than, you don't want to set up tension between families and non-families. And
no, that's helpful. Thanks, Mary.
But the problem is that I don't, the money that we charge is just paying for Fair Share and the cost of the room. We don't, I mean, we've had the generosity for the year to cover us so we can work up a sustainable model, but it does appear that we're going to have to obviously do some fundraising, and rather than we're not going to charge on for anything. So I think that will be the challenge, really.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then I think the other sort of question I had really was, I think you've all alluded to obviously the food supply reducing from the supermarkets recently, in particular, and some of the donations and so on. So how much of a sort of a fear is it each time you open the pantry in terms of whether you will actually have enough food to service the demand for that session, and sort of how much are you having to go out in addition to your planned supply routes with the likes of Fair Share, etc., in the membership models? Are you having to go out and spend in addition just to keep the pantries up and running? I think that would be quite useful to have some feedback on that, please.
Faith would be really good to answer that. I think this is certainly an ongoing issue across all of our food pantries in Cheltenham. But Faith, do you want to just talk about your most recent example?
Yeah, so we spend on average about £700 a week on,
Gosh.
yeah, it's very scary.
But talk about what you did last week, because you had this big appeal, didn't you? Because your shelves were empty.
Yes, so last week we don't often get to the point where we think we're not going to be able to open, but just before, so I've been on 2 weeks annual leave, and I was on a course in Manchester the week before, so I've not really been around for 3 weeks, and so it was a case of, I looked just before I went off, I looked in the store cupboards, and apart from pasta, which very rarely, I mean, apart from CCP, who had none, we had loads of, our shelves were bare, CCP's shelves were bare. I think everybody, I'm not sure about the other 3, but I know ourselves and CCP, and we are the largest 2 pantries in Cheltenham, were both kind of putting out calls of, our shelves are completely bare, and that is quite a worrying thought. And we're very lucky at Springbank in the sense that we have got our pantry users, we say to them when they join up, yes, you can weekly, however, if you all come weekly, there will be no food. So come when you need to. Don't use this as somewhere where you come and do your weekly shop. You come, you get your 10 items from the shelf, although CCP and West Cheltenham, it's only 8 items, because when we all set up at different times, and there wasn't the joined up approach when we all first set up. So they've got 8 items, we have 10 items, and so do Cornerstones, and Lakeside have an inordinate amount. But we said, so you get your 10 items, you get your fruit and veg, you get your bread if we have it, and you get your dairy and your meat, and you get an item from the freezer, whatever it may be. We've got KFC that comes in now, so KFC is now cast as one of their meat items, and people will happily take that. So we will be reducing the amount of fresh meat that we get in, because meat is extremely expensive. So please be mindful of that. People were, when we used to put fresh fruit and veg, the fruit and veg out for people to choose for themselves, we were constantly having to say to people, don't take everything, because there's another 40 people coming in behind you. This has got to last us all week. So now we bag it up, and that works much, much better. Apart from the people that will say, can I just have a bag of potatoes? In which case that's fine. And we'll just get them a bag of potatoes. But we actually had to put out both ourselves and CCP put out appeals on social media asking for food. and when you do appeals on social media saying, can we have food, you do get an influx. So we had to do it before Christmas as well, although we did get an awful lot of chocolate and biscuits before Christmas, but that's fine. You do, if you put out appeals on social media, and if you've got a GoFundMe page or Just Giving or bank account that people can pay into, then you will find that people will contact you and say, can I make a monetary donation? And so people will do that as well.
I just
So
say favour.
it does work, but
Yeah.
you do have to do it, because you do disappear from people's consciousness when there's a crisis in Ukraine, or there's an earthquake in somewhere, or something else happens, then you do disappear. And so you have to keep putting yourself into people's out there to remind people that you're still there. Because we were literally thinking we're not going to be able to open.
I think just on the back of that with Faith, a couple of things that we find work. We have a WhatsApp group, so we can put things on there if we've got someone's got, you know, loads of milk or something that's about to go. So that's a really useful tool to kind of share. We use an organisation called His Church, which I think is a better, they do kind of pallets of food. If you look them up, they're not they are a Christian organisation, but it's not, you know, they're not expecting you to talk about Jesus as you give out the food. So they but that's been good. I think they've had some really good stuff from them. But I think the social media thing is really important, and again it comes back to this kind of coordination. So Deb and I went a couple of weeks ago, and we were at Springbank, and we looked at the shelves ourselves, and then I approached some different groups of people on their behalf. And I think the social media thing, if you're putting it every week, we need food, then people are a bit kind of, oh, that's boring, seen it all before. But actually every so often it does really help. And I think having a really specific list of what you want people to donate is really good to those expensive items. So people will think, oh, beans and pasta. But actually, if you're saying tinned meat, shampoo, because people are willing to donate to these things, but sometimes it's a case of knowing what you know, tuna. So I think the other thing when you come into these food pantries is people are kind of savvy. They want to know their money is going further. So actually they don't necessarily want to take the Tesco value beans and the cheap pasta. They want the things like the tea, the coffee, the tinned meat, the pasta sauces. So if you imagine, you know, if you had £15 to spend, and that's what you know, and somebody was giving you 10 items for free and they didn't have a cost on them, you would want to be clever about how you use that money. So I think having a really good short list of maybe half a dozen items that you can almost kind of rattle off if someone says, oh, what would be good, that's also helpful. So.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris, you've got your hand up. Would you like to do your question?
Yeah, okay. Hello, everybody. Chris from Cirencester Rotary Club. And I have a question pretty much for Mary, really, but it may be the answer may be of interest to a lot of people. We are going to pilot running a longest table style community meal in Cirencester in the coming months. And that the longest table concept was dreamt up by the Long Table, but it was mainly geared towards the last Christmas community meals around Christmas. But we think, you know, you can have a longest table meal any time of the year, and it doesn't have to be around Christmas time. So we're going to be doing that. It's a pay only if you can meal. So, you know, there will be some funding from the people who participate, but probably won't cover the total cost. We are working in collaboration with Cirencester Town Council as well on this. But to home in on the question, it's about we will source the food initially using heavily discounted high quality frozen meals. to cut out, you know, preparing raw food from scratch and all that work involved there. But we want to be running a series of meals into the future, if possible. And a question to someone like Mary, would I come to you, Mary, for where can I source this food? Would I go straight to a supermarket and say, please, can I have some food for free if possible, or, you know, at very low prices if possible, blah, blah, blah. What would I need to do if I was sourcing the food from scratch?
I can only tell you what I have sourced from Fair Share, but I think Jacqueline will be able to help you with finding things. It's finding food for me is still the struggle. Yeah, I can't be very, I'm not okay with everything yet. I'm still trying to find sources of food. But I would have thought maybe also if you spoke to the Long Table in Stroud about whether they could help you directly.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Chris. I think the Long Table runs actually every day. They have a meal every day offering. Will Mansell and Tom, Mr. Baker brother, who heads that up, would be more than happy to share your ideas. And I do think that kind of sustainability, longevity thing do go. I just seen that Cook might have surplus frozen food. Yeah, they do have their own charity stuff that they kind of put stuff into. Wiltshire Farm Foods do frozen meals, but it is about, if you're going to do, it's an expensive way to cook frozen meals. I think you need to perhaps have a conversation about how you're going to keep that going. I'd be happy to kind of take that off the call if you wanted and connect you up with Will or Tom. That's not an issue.
Well, I have spoken to them, but they didn't seem to. I mean, they basically do frozen food. They you know, stock up their freezers of love, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And they do the cafe as well.
Yeah.
So they didn't seem to. I mean, they didn't see that as part of the concept that they be the providers of the food for.
No. I know what you mean.
So sorry. But Mary, if I was to come to you in the future and say we're going to do another Longest Table meal, where do you think I could get I mean, I'm going to be cooking a menu. I'm not going to be just randomly sort of cooking half a dozen tins of beans or whatever. I'm going to be cooking cottage pie plus vegetables, etc., etc. Would you be able to advise me or point me in the right directions where to go to supply the raw materials?
Again, I'm not. I would probably I mean, we can definitely talk about it, definitely, and I'm sure Jackie would be able to give you a lot more connections, but we are expecting the Long Table in Cirencester in the not too distant future, are we not? So
yes, absolutely, and we will probably collaborate with them when you know, as soon as they arrive, basically.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're desperately looking for is free accommodation, because as I say, it costs me more in paying for my church hall than it does for the food from Fair Share. And so one of the things with the community, if there is a social hub in the middle of Cirencester, is that the pantry would get, you know, on the back of that, we'd be able to run without having that cost, which would be great. But
Mary, on that note, I'm very surprised the church hall is potentially charging you such an amount of money. I say, if you want my contact details, I can always find church contacts all over the county. And I can potentially, I helped someone in Swindon find a church, but if you want something, if you want me to help and have some kind of influence, I can do that with you. I've got church contacts across the county.
Yeah, well, I haven't broken their arms yet, but I really, thank you. It is a bit of a problem, and this is, most of the community organisations in Cirencester do not have a space that they can use. And one of the things that the local authorities, and this isn't, I'm not particularly aiming this at CDC, but it's something we talk to Cirencester Town Council about all the time is the fact that we go to, we can't find a place to go to hold any meeting. We're always having to hire a place. We put on lunches, warm lunches 4 times last year, and we were having to pay for the hall to do it. And obviously the churches want to keep their premises going, but it does seem to me that somewhere along the line that it's just ludicrous. I mean, it's £15 an hour and I do 4 hours, you know. I mean, that's a lot of money every week. So yes, thank you. We will be negotiating that.
It's a big issue, Mary. I think, you know, especially hearing from Alexandra, you know, Hungry No More, you know, it's your space availability, isn't it? And the demand for your service is always a hard one to balance. Mary Ann, would you like to ask your question?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute because I've been sat, a bit brain freeze. I just listening to everyone, it's amazing because it does sound like a lot of hard work, and Working for Wellbeing was really excited about this idea, but what I've kind of come to the conclusion is that you don't have enough food. And so we're in the middle of nowhere with 2 sort of small shops. How would we fill our pantry? And if we're all relying on the same sources like the big supermarkets and these things, I feel like we're becoming more of a food bank rather than a food pantry, because we're not doing food wastage, we're getting donations, and we've gone from reducing food waste and better for the environment and nutritious meal to everyone to going, oh quick, let's get in convenient food. So it sounds like you're not even covering the costs as well. So that for me as a small charity would be worrying that we're having so much outgoings and not covering our costs and not having anything in the pantry, because we're all kind of, if 4 of us go away from this meeting and start our own pantries, we're all then fighting for these food sources.
I think you raise a really valid point. I don't think there's necessarily a straightforward answer, but it's definitely worth, you know, as a consideration that there is, you know, the availability of food or the cost of food. It is a difficult one to balance. And obviously hearing from Faith and what was happening in Cheltenham, you know, I suppose there's a difficulty when you've got, you know, you've got an X number of families. It doesn't matter how many families they are, but if they're relying on you to come, you know, there's a huge pressure to have the food on the shelves to provide the service that you're trying to offer that's required. So yeah, I think unless anyone else has got anything to comment, I think it's really good food for thought, Mary. But
we're becoming food banks rather than a food pantry, which isn't the role of a food pantry.
I think you're right. And the other thing is, interestingly, with the community fridges is that, you know, they were very, you know, many are very successful with the food waste and reducing stigma and it being about sort of that surplus. But what then happens is that they're finding that people are coming to them and queuing because they need the food that they have got available. So it then moves away from being, this is surplus and you know, you don't want it wasted, and we're a hub where we can redistribute, to you've got people there and all their food can be gone in a matter of hours, where, you know, the original concept was much more, you know, here it is, it's available for everyone. You've now got people relying on those concepts of community fridges, and therefore, as you say, the lines blur, because how different is that to a food bank and so on. So I think, yeah, it's exceptionally hard to navigate. Alexandra, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and we class ourselves as a food bank, not as a food pantry. But one of the things that we definitely notice is be clear about where your clients are coming from, because a lot of those people who need, as you were saying, Lizzie, you know, if those people need that food, they also struggle to get anywhere very far, because they probably can't afford the bus fare, or they can't afford the petrol if they've got a car to do the shopping in that way. So finding, you know, location is not just a case of how much does it cost us to have that location, and we're lucky that we don't pay for our little hovel garage in the car park. We have to pay for our additional storage, but we have managed to get funding to pay for that. So we're fortunate in terms of we don't pay for our premises that we operate out of, but finding a location that is going to work for the people that you're trying to help is really important. And it's not easy. I think when Lel set it up, finding a suitable location in a cost-effective way was the hardest challenge that she had. And I think she would say it took her several months to even start to find anywhere that she could operate out of. And even then it took, you know, I think it was 4 moves until we ended up where we are, which is, you know, not great, but it's manageable and we can do it.
That's really good to know. Deb, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. One is, I think we need to, well, it's something we've been discussing, but it's that coordinating at a county level and how we can look at this landscape on a bigger picture. And the other thing is, there are a lot of models out there now that are mobile. And I think, you know, maybe in particular for the forest and the Cotswolds, that is something that might need to be considered, because we talk about a lot of costs. And if you're paying, for example, 60 quid a week just to set up and run the one session, if there could be, and there is a lot of collaborative work going on, but if there could be more of a collaborative way of working between some of these pantries so that they share the resource. So the resource, for example, like Ruth mentioned with the van, is shared between several organisations across the district, then you could look at how you could do it. There's an interesting model in the forest, which is a Dean Forest Food Hub, where they don't do deliveries, they do drop-off points. So you would drop off a set of food parcels, you know, pantry parcels to a place in the village, and then drop off to the next one. And then people come to that particular drop-off point to pick things up. And it's a working model in the forest already. That's just for a cooperative food project, though, as opposed to a food pantry. So I think, even though it's hard and everything's pressured, sometimes I think we look too much inside the box. We need to maybe start looking at how we can work across the borders and how we can work across the county. You know, if Ruth has a glut of food in Tewkesbury, we need to find a place for that food to go. Like Jackie said, there is food out there. It's getting harder to resource. So how do we resource it more efficiently? And I think that's part of the, you know, I think we are actually at the point where we need to open that door and start having these conversations. And we need to have them across the county as well as at district level.
Definitely. Mary, do you want to come back in? Your hand's up. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
That's such an interesting point about cooperative purchasing, because one of the things that's happened in Oxford is that the members themselves collected £7,000 and asked the pantry to go shopping for them. And they've turned it down because they've said, you know, that is just completely changes the nature of what we are. But they also, their members can walk, and the issue of the distance in the Cotswolds, and I'm sure it is in the Forest of Dean, it is a huge issue. You know, people have all the little shops, the village shops are closed, you know, so it is possibly looking for a network of, I don't know if you know, the churches go out, you know, half these churches are empty, and you know, the priests go out, don't they, or vicars go out once a week. I don't know, maybe there is something in that, and just purchase, but then, you know, is that a food pantry? I don't know.
No, I think it's, I'm mindful of time and obviously don't want to run over. I think I hope that this has been a good opportunity for all of you that have attended. We've been really lucky with the breadth and diversity of speakers. You've all, you know, been able to give an insight into different projects and different ways of doing an offering like you are. And I know everyone's busy. and you know, this has been 2 hours of a morning, but thank you very much for your time, because I think it's been really invaluable to hear in one place at one time lots of different ideas and considerations and suggestions. And I think, you know, obviously as a network Feeding Gloucestershire, this is something that we are looking at with a county-wide lens. Obviously today was about looking for specifically for the Forest and Cotswolds, because they're sort of earlier on in their journey, and I think there's an opportunity because of that to really sort of look at how to join things up well, learn from those of you that have spoken from your experience, and I'm sure you'll get called upon again as these projects develop in these districts to sort of learn from you and ask you specific questions. But I think the way it was ended, and you know what Deb's saying, and Mary, you know, we've got to look at things a little bit differently, look at that coordination, look at sort of the distance of our rural villages and our demand and location, like Alexandra was saying. So I think there's plenty of food for thought for the two districts that, you know, have come today. And, you know, once again, just thank you so much for coming. We have recorded the session, so we will share it, because I think there's learning here well beyond ourselves, and we will, you know, Feeding Gloucestershire will have it on their website, and we'll share it out across our channels. And I think mainly that let's keep the conversation going. Let's, you know, keep in touch. Those that have wanted to have shared their contact details in the chat, and I'm very happy, as will Deb, to coordinate if anyone wants to contact us and be put in contact with each other or other organisations. Nick, thank you very much for tech hosting us today, and like I say, thank you again to the speakers, because it's a lot of time to give up, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you all soon and hear how projects have progressed.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And if I could just echo Lizzie's thanks, but to say thank you also to yourself, Lizzie, for convening the session. Hugely informative. So thanks all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.